Dominatrix is returning in July. Originally, she appeared in a 6-episode run back in 2007. What's the biggest difference between that version of the character in 2007 and this new reimagined version?
Thanks for the question. I appreciate the time. Let's assume people aren't familiar with Dominatrix. The idea kind of formulated in my mind. We all go to Halloween stores, especially during that time when our girlfriends, when you see a nurse outfit, she's doing a dominatrix thing. When you see she's got her whip and I don't know what. And when you see anything, a fashion model, she's got a whip. So they're all based around the sexy versions of those characters, which means dominatrix. So I looked around and I found out that nobody actually owned the word dominatrix nor the image. So I trademarked dominatrix and the image. And then the great team, Tom Waltz and so on at IDW, and I put this character out. And I came up with a basic story premise, the background story, the Bible, if you will, that Dominique Stern, Dominatrix, is an orphan, doesn't know her background, doesn't know where she comes from, always had problems with men. Everybody does. And so the perfect job for her would be to be a sex object because she's got the accoutrement, the twin assets that make all heterosexual men pick up their heads and take notice. And she's minding her own business, doing her job, torturing a client when the door is smashed open and in crashes in all kinds of strange images. And that's just a precursor. And then the fun begins. Basically, the premise of the Dominatrix series is a cross between, if you haven't seen the movie, North by Northwest, or even Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman. The premise is, yes?
I haven't seen Marathon Man. I've seen North by Northwest, but tell me.
You should see Marathon Man, but North by Northwest or the original Fugitive on TV. So you've got a character that's being hounded. People are trying to kill the character, and the character doesn't have a clue why. Neither do we, the audience. So as the character and the audience find out the dynamics of what's going on, who the various players are, and in our case, Dominatrix is being hounded by both sides, the good guys and the bad guys. We'll explain in the series who they are. And it's an awful lot of fun. She tries to hide who and what she is because of the physical assets of what she looks like. But because of these super scientific pills, which, by the way, exist, our military gets those. You can take one of those pills and stay awake for days, or not eat for days, or increases your strength. This actually occurs when we watch news and see a guy on heroin or whatever these crazy drugs are, naked on a highway in Texas, and I'm talking about a real event. You got 5 to 6 policemen on top of this naked guy, and they can't take him down.
Yeah,
they shoot him 2 or 3 times, no pain. It's the chemicals inside that sort of puts on this armor. So this is a case where our lead character and lots of other characters use these pills and makes them semi-superhuman. And all the fun begins, lots of intricate characters and stuff, really a fun story. And so the story formulated in my mind, what would happen if Cary Grant, the lead character in North by Northwest, was actually a dominatrix on the run. When you don't know what's going on, who's trying to kill him, and a lot of double dealing, and you don't know who's your friend and who's not.
Now,
basically, it's CIA meets TNA.
Conceptually, I love this. I want to swing it back around to Dominatrix, but I know that you actually have a really long history with comic books. So, how did you even become a lifelong fan of comics?
Well, when I first came to America, I was born in Israel. I know I don't look Swiss. And I couldn't speak English very well at about 8.5 years of age. Actually, I was 8 before I was 9. You see what I just did there? That was another one.
I'm taking notes. I'm stealing all this.
This is all good stuff. I'm giving you gold. right here. And comic books basically saved my life in a way that even television or certainly school couldn't do. It just opened up the imagination of this kind of fantasy world where people can do extraordinary things. Nobody's ordinary. Everybody's extraordinary. My first books were probably early issues of World's Finest, around 60, 61. And I didn't know who Robin or Batman or anything was. I just saw one of them could fly through the air, and the other, and then slowly was introduced to the timely Atlas line and it became a religion to me. Kirby, Lee, with Dick Ayers inking, by the way. Much prefer Dick Ayers to some of the others, although Vince Colletta was pretty good on the Tales of Asgard stuff. And so, it became a part of my life. I remember Superman was never one of my favorite characters because it had no flaws. If you're superhuman, you come from another planet, what's your daily routine? Being shot and being impervious. But
so who was your all-time favorite comic as a kid? Who did you grow up really gravitating towards?
It's tough to say that because it's like asking you, what do you like better, cheesecake or steak? Yes.
Right.
They're different flavors. I loved the Atlas monster lines, those early Tales to Astonish and Suspense and all the rest of them, Fin Fang Foom, of course, and all the rest of them, and became engrossed in the different styles of the artist. Ditko, clearly different than Kirby, who was, sort of in your face with the punches coming right in and the faces in and out. The perspectives are just amazing. And of course, he heightened that in the Marvel books when somebody got punched. They were punched out of the panel. I'd never seen anything like that. And so I loved the monster books. And then when the Fantastic Four came out, that first issue, which I had, I couldn't figure out what kind of a book it was because they were superhero books. And then they were different kinds of books, monster books and romance books and so on. And on the cover of the Fantastic Four, they're not wearing costumes or anything. It's just a monster coming out of the floor. And when I started reading it, it took me through this kind of process, the origin story and the gamma rays and all that coming in. And then finally starting to awkwardly and self-consciously design outfits for themselves. I thought that was unbelievable because we never talked about Superman as Clark Kent, and all of a sudden he's got this outfit, well designed. It's got this, like, who designed this? Where did it come from?
Right.
I even loved later issues of Spider-Man where he's trying to figure out what's the best design. But initially, when he ran around, he just put on a hood and he went into the wrestling ring and was kind of this wrestler guy with an awkward Spidey outfit. I thought it was so, and as a matter of fact, as if Stan Lee was around today, he would tell you what an amazing person he was. I had known him for decades and decades, but as a 13-year-old kid, I used to torture Flo Steinberg, his assistant, at 645 Madison Avenue. Hi, hello, may I help you? Yeah, it's Gene. I want to talk to Stan. Well, you have to understand. Actually, I had a high voice. No, Stan can't talk to you right now. No, you should. I've got a great idea. See, it's a new book. It's called Omar the Cliff Dweller. It kind of takes Turok, Son of Stone, but with Kirby Ayers, and you mix dinosaurs and everything. It's about this, primitive man named Omar, and he lives in the cliffs. Omar the Cliff Dweller. You get it? Kind of like Turok, Son of Stone. But that's, of course, Dell, and we want to do it Marvel style. Okay, Gene, we'll have Stan call you right back. And out of nowhere, a few months later, I actually got a postcard, God bless him, from Stan himself. And it said in his handwriting, Gene, you are destined to do great things, Excelsior Stan. And for me, as a 13-year-old little schmuck in Queens, New York, this was a sign from the gods. I mean, he actually existed instead of just in the fan pages and the credits, that he would say something kind to me when I had nothing and had no resume or anything. It just I mean, inspired is a soft word for that. Stan Lee made it all possible. And by the way, not too many years after that, Kiss exploded around the world. It's been 50 years so far, and boy, do I look good. And we've had comic books, and the first comic book was when I called Stan and said, Kiss wants to do Kiss comics. We're superheroes anyway. Our Destroyer album was completely inspired by, Kirby Ayers inking Kirby pencils as a Marvel book. And we don't even have guitars and drums on the cover. It's just us posing in it, kind of Kirby poses.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan and I immediately connected. And the first issue came out. Originally, Kirby was going to draw it, pencil it at least. And I think he had some issues with Stan at that point and went to DC or whatever. And so Alan Weiss wound up doing it with a Kirby cover, I'm pretty sure. And I still have, by the way, the original pencils of Kirby doing the first attempt at a Kiss cover. And we actually, because we're bizarre, thought, well, let's do a cool thing. Let's fly up to Boston or upstate New York, actually, Albany, I believe, where the printing presses were, and let's take our blood and pour it into the red ink. And that was actually certified so that once we're all obsolete and extinct and aliens land on the third planet from the sun. See what happened?
Yeah, you're gone.
Aliens are listening.
They didn't want you talking about it anymore.
That's right. I don't know where I am, but I'm down there someplace. You can see. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So once the aliens land here, they're going to be able to take a Kiss comic book and recreate humanity because our DNA literally is in the books.
Well, you know what? On behalf of all of humanity, thank you for that, Mr. Simmons.
It is interesting that although Dominatrix has a very, really cool outfit on the cover and so on, in a lot of the while she's running away, you don't want to advertise who and what you are.
Yeah.
So she doesn't wear it. Later on, we're going to introduce, the outfit and so on when she's hot and bothered.
Now, speaking of, how many issues are you planning for this series to run?
Well, if you talk with Denton at Opus, he was a really good guy, by the way. We connected right away. We're looking at a 4-issue, burping. Looking at a 4-issue run that will barely cover the mythology and the backstory. So I'm sure there are going to be more after that. And I've got other titles. I've got Zipper that ran, 12 or 13 issues, or Dominatrix ran that at IDW. And then Gene Simmons' House of Horrors, which, by the way, is being developed into an anthology TV series.
Oh, really? That's amazing. That's very exciting. I love horror anthologies. I was a huge fan of like EC, Tales from the Crypt, and then I'd love all that stuff. I mean, and I'm a big fan of anthologies.
Well, for me, nothing touched Twilight Zone. Just the acting, the writing, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not a slasher and a blood guy. I much prefer,
psychological horror.
Yeah, it bears noting that some of the most horrific movies, like Psycho, you actually never really saw flesh being pierced by a knife. It was all in your head.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because your imagination will always make it worse than what it actually, what the special effects could be.
And it takes better writing to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Now, just for fun, if a movie was made about Dominatrix, who's an actress today that you would love to see play her?
That's a really good point, but I prefer casting an unknown so that you don't break that fourth wall kind of thing and say, oh, that's, Jennifer Lopez or whoever as so-and-so. Because once you get famous, I would much rather if you ever saw a Luc Besson film called Anna, which is quite good, actually.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so you don't know who the actress is, but you totally buy it, and then you cast around it. Helen Mirren is the mother figure in the Kremlin, who's her boss, who's constantly smoking and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the authenticity of the character has a lot to do with the fact that you don't know who it is, so you buy into the fact that she's Anna. Not a good name for a movie or a character, but that's because he's French. He doesn't understand.
You know, that's a good point, too, because I think a lot of my favorite comic book characters in live action have been, you know, they were all unknowns before, you know, Christopher Reeve as Superman, or you think of like, you know, Chris Hemsworth. Nobody knew who he was before Thor, and so on and so forth. You know?
When a little side story, because I've been around a long time, when Dick Donner, who was a friend who directed, you know, the movies and everything, the early ones, when he cast Christopher Reeve in it, he called me up and said, "Hey, I've got the Superman. Can we come over to the house?" So we hung out. We watched Looney Tunes cartoons, Christopher Reeve, Dick Donner, and I. And unfortunately, Donner's passed on by now.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing I kept thinking throughout the whole thing is, are you related to George Reeves, the original TV Superman? But I didn't ask.
Did you ask? Oh, you didn't ask him?
No, not that one. But Donner and I became friends. I don't know why. And he used to take me to all these events. There was a guy named Alan Ladd Jr. whose father was a legend in movies. And they'd run films over. He was the head of a studio at that time. And they'd run films at his house. And I'd sit there with, you know, name the Hollywood stars. They'd all be there.
Now, do you still have your comic book collection? I mean, because you've rattled off some really cool books. So do you still have those? And if so, like roughly how many comic books do you think you still own today?
In storage, thousands.
Oh, wow.
Possibly complete runs. You know, the first 50 issues when they were really impactful. I mean, every issue would be mind-boggling. Here's Fantastic Four, I'm making it up, 36, and you have a new character, the Silver Surfer. What? And all of a sudden, it's completely new mythology, and there's Galactus. And I mean, it's like reading the Bible, and within the Bible, all of a sudden you get the Quran and you know, all the different religions within that. Just opened up doorways. And then the Inhumans with his mad brother, and it just insane, you know, insane stuff. So deep, so lush, the storytelling. And then later on, of course, once all the characters, thousands, were created, the issues became sort of run-of-the-mill. The Red Skull appears in Spider-Man. Let's do another one where the Hulk fights the Outsiders. And so it became a little more normal. But initially, the idea of the Kree and the Skrull and the interplanetary war, that's deep stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think your most valuable book probably is?
I have to say, for the record, I'm so sick and tired of all the different Captain Marvels. I'm sick and tired of it. I loved Ditko's Captain Atom, by the way, when he did it for Charlton. And
now, when you say you're sick of Captain Marvel, does that include Shazam too?
I can't stand it. I mean, as a little boy myself, I hated the idea of a little boy becoming a grown man. I just didn't buy it.
So you're not a big fan of that Tom Hanks movie?
No, hated it. Look at the genius of Lee. And now they don't show it because it's politically incorrect. You've got a lawyer who's what's called a gimp. He's walking around with a cane. That's his Achilles heel. He's got problems, and he taps the cane, transforms into, the God of Thunder. And Bruce Banner has, anger issues. And of course, when he gives it to the anger, it's Jekyll and Hyde, and he becomes the Hulk. And every character had flaws. DC characters have no flaws. I mean, later on, Batman started to have psychological problems because his parents were killed in front of him. I get it. But that's what life is. Life is, growing up, getting cavities and getting sick, and that's part of the human condition. And so these flawless, godlike characters, even even the gods of Asgard all had flaws. They were Sif, Lady Sif. What a great name. We used to joke around it in school. Lady Sif. Have you got Sif? No, but I know somebody who does. But Baldar and the Guardians of the Rainbow Bridge was so lush, so deep that you could almost understand the impetus, the backstory of these personalities. And with DC, it's like everybody's from Krypton, and so what? Everybody's got nice outfits, and everybody's good looking.
Yeah.
It never had, I don't know, all of Clark Kent's. And by the way, I was always a big fan of Kurt Swan, the Superman artist, and Gardner Fox was great. I loved the early Green Lanterns, loved early Adam.
Right. I want to bring it back to your friendship with Stan Lee, because I saw your letter to Stan Lee in 1982 about wanting to play the Thing, in a possible Fantastic Four movie. Did Stan Lee ever respond to that?
He called me.
Did he?
Yeah.
What did he say?
Gene, we're planning the politically correct thing. We're planning it. We'll keep it in mind. We're so happy. And he always talked about the we, when he clearly had so much. He had the right to say I. So did Kirby. And so did Ditko on Spidey. I loved the question, by the way. I have to say that, when it was at Charlton, not at DC. At any rate, loved the Blue Beetle at Charlton. At DC, he's become just too powerful, too big, too everything. So, yeah, I did that. And then I hosted Stan at the Aspen Film Convention, whatever it's called there, because we were debuting a technology that enables you to talk in different languages automatically. It was called Ortspo. So Stan and I were on stage, and every time Stan and I would get together, I'd tell him more things than he ever thought anybody would ever know or want to know or forget. For one thing, fans may not know that Stan Lee was actually Larry Lieber's brother, that Lee's last name is actually Lieber.
Oh, yeah, I did know that.
Larry Lieber, Stanley Lieber. Lieber auf Deutsch, I speak a little German, means, like love or love. And Larry Lieber was not the worst artist, but clearly not the best. He'd get a little, do an issue of Ant-Man here and there, but he wasn't a regular artist on anything. And, told Stan all about his monster books and, obscure stuff. And I'd get him. I'd bust him every once in a while. Oh, no, Stan, you got that wrong. Oh, he says, I created 5,000 characters I don't remember.
Well,
what an amazing man.
He was incredible.
To go through life and to create one memorable character is an achievement, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mickey Spillane, James Bond, Ian Fleming. That's great. This guy created 5,000 characters.
It's insane.
With their own mythology.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much credit Stan Lee to having a job right now. I mean, if it wasn't for Stan Lee, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So, I mean, it's incredible. I do want to tell you though,
we can't short sight Kirby, who on his own likewise created multiple mythologies. The New Gods and Darkseid and all that very deep, intricate stuff. Even Kamandi. I love Kamandi.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you know this, but they're in the midst of recasting for the Thing right now in the MCU. So have you written a letter to Kevin Feige yet?
They don't have enough money.
Awesome. One thing I wanted, a serious question for you. Who do you think has a longer tongue? Is it you or is it this guy right here?
As Venom came out, when the movie posters first came out, the media had a lot of fun with putting me in makeup and my tongue next to Venom and so on. And by the way, I thought Hardy was a great casting thing. I've been a fan of his ever since his movie called Bronson,
Yes,
Uh,
I remember Bronson.
oh my goodness, a tour de force.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure Venom's got a longer tongue. But the difference is mine has a spin and dry cycle, and it can whip up a good goddamn froth.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, one thing that I really enjoy about you guys is, I mean, and I don't even know if you get enough credit for this, but all the merchandise that you guys have come out with. I mean, you might have, Star Wars might be able to thank you for some of that, but with all the wild Kiss
I got to tell
merchandise.
you a little side story about Star Wars.
Okay, now,
So,
okay,
yes.
tell me.
So, minding my own business, and the phone rings. Hello. Hi, Gene. Yeah, it's George. Hi, George. George who? He goes, George Lucas. George Lucas. Well, how are you? He goes, oh, I'm really good. Say, listen, I've got 2 kids and everything, and I hear you've got a fantastic nanny who was a former teacher. Said, yes. Oh, she's the finest, and we love her because every time there's a lesson about anything, she goes, here's the history, here's why, and the kid's really getting a special thing. Well, listen, I'd like to hire her. Would you let her go? Go, no, I'm not going to let her go. Go get your, go get your own nanny thing. Said, no, I need somebody special, and everybody tells me your kids are the most well-behaved and smart and all that. If you let her become my nanny, I'll get her own 4,000 square foot home on 2 acres, her own property, and she'll be set for life. She'll never have to worry about. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So George Lucas stole my nanny.
That's amazing. My question was going to be, with all the amazing Kiss merchandise that you guys have come up over the years, how come you guys don't have Kiss makeup removal wipes?
Well, once you put it on, you never want to take it off. But we do have Kiss makeup kits, literally thousands of items.
Yeah.
Kiss condoms, Kiss caskets. We'll get you coming, and we'll get you going.
Is it now? I'd heard that Dimebag Darrell was actually buried in a Kiss casket. Is that true?
That is true. His family, Dimebag had Ace tattooed on his chest, tragically.
Mm-hmm.
He was killed on stage by a lunatic, who shot him in the head.
Yeah.
And Dime's family reached out, and I had a few Kiss caskets, different kinds, and I actually sent one from my collection, and he was indeed buried in the Kiss casket. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, speaking of, there's been, I mean, Pantera is one of them, but there's been so many bands that have been inspired by you guys. Of all the bands that have been inspired by Kiss, like who's impressed you the most? Be it presentation wise or musically.
Well, it's not a fair question because Kirk Hammett cut his teeth on Kiss records, and that's Metallica. And Dime was in Pantera. But it runs the gamut. Trent Reznor, at a certain point when you're 13 or whatever, and you're a guy in the middle of nowhere, Tom Morello did our acceptance speech, or the introduction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And his story actually was very inspiring about being a kid in the middle of America, not having enough things, to inspire him or get him thinking about other possibilities and stuff. And he started talking about Kiss and about how getting those records wasn't just how to play guitar and get up on stage, but opening up the ideas of imagination, the visual sense of things. And I met all sorts of people, not just rockers and so on, but people from different walks of life who say, this was important to me in my childhood. Mm-hmm. And listen, that's the biggest. It's not so much that they're celebrities, but it's a good piece in my heart. But I will tell you, nothing, and I mean nothing, competes with a 5-year-old kid who lives, breathes, and eats Kiss. When you see a 5-year-old kid in Kiss makeup sitting on the shoulders of his father, who's got his own makeup on, next to his father, who's 50 or 60 years old, and they're all rocking out at the show. And when the kid finally goes, where am I? Over here. And he finally goes like that. I'm going, doesn't get better.
Yeah.
because
Speaking of, you
the-
guys are coming to Nashville. I think in October, and I'm trying to snag tickets because I want to bring my son because he hasn't seen a Kiss concert, so we want to be there. And I know your final show is on December 2nd at Madison Square Garden. What are your plans after that final show? Are you focusing on producing more movies or writing more comic books? Are we going to finally get to see the Cave Dweller?
Omar.
Omar, there he is. I didn't want to get his name wrong, but I remembered Cave Dweller.
Yeah, I also had another set of characters called the Astronauts. Basically, the Three Stooges in space meeting aliens, and kind of like an Archie or a Harvey book, more like that. Just crazy. More like if it was Mad, it was one of the characters in the Mad books. Yes to all that. The comics will continue, TV and movies. We have a restaurant chain called Rock and Brews, which is already 2 of them at LAX, across the U.S., major cities. And also there are now Rock and Brews casinos and quite a few other businesses. It would whirl your mind. And we have the Gene Simmons Band, which will continue to do festivals and stuff like that because it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But Kiss will stop. And one day after Madison Square Garden, the very last show of all time, December the 2nd, I'll be at Electric Lady Studios setting up for 3 or 4 days of special fan gathering stuff where they'll be able to record with me. Yeah. They'll be able to have their own tambourine playing or voices or whatever on their own copies of their own recorded song. And I'm going to be giving away, as part of that, pieces of the memorabilia I've had, lyrics, artwork, all kinds of stuff, old leather pants, crazy stuff for 50 years, from 50 years. So instead of doing auction houses and stuff like that, I'd rather have the fans get it instead of, collectors and people who are just going to keep flipping it, if you see what I mean. So December 4, 5, and 6, if you go to Gene Simmons ElectricLadyStudios.com or just GeneSimmons.com, you'll be able to see info at GeneSimmons.com. We'll get you if you want to go. I think it's mostly sold out anyway.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I definitely would love to go. If I got anything, you see, I got a wall of stuff here. I would not resell it. It would be.
It's not cheap.
I can imagine. And I don't make a lot of money, so I don't know. We'll see. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've been so incredibly generous sitting here talking with me this long. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I can't wait for Dominatrix #1 in July to check it out. And do you have any more info on your anthology series and how far along that is?
Well, Denton at Opus and I are going to be talking. Let's relaunch, rebirth Dominatrix first, and then we'll talk about other books, Zipper and Gene Simmons' House of Horrors later. But, too much at one time is just too much to digest. There's so many wonderful independent publishers out there. It's how do you go down to your local comic shop, and even if you picked up 100 titles, you can't get through them. There's so much.
No, you're
by the
right.
way, so much good stuff.
Also, it says I got less than a minute on the Zoom, so I don't want to rush off and I don't want to accidentally cut you off. So I'm going to let you go. But thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll get together later on down the road, and hopefully I see you in Nashville this October.
Okay, boss. Thank you.